Amelia is halfway through her night shift when she hears it. Not an alarm, not a shout, just a sound, low, rhythmic, growing louder by the second, coming from somewhere above the ceiling of a building that should have nothing above it except sky. She pulls one headphone off her ear. Wait, is that a helicopter? It is. And in the next 30 minutes, everything is going to fall apart. Inside the G4S cash depot in Västberga, a quiet industrial district just south of Stockholm's city center, the night shift is running exactly as it always does. The building is a hulking, reinforced structure designed to hold tens of millions of Swedish kroner at any given time. And tonight, the last week of the month, it is absolutely packed. The end of the month is always peak season. Wages need to be paid out. Banks across Sweden need restocking. ATMs in every city, every town, every corner store need to be loaded before morning. So the counting rooms are full, the cages are full, and the staff is working steadily through the small hours to prepare for the rush. Amelia is sitting at her station, counting banknotes, stacks of them, thousands and thousands of them. She's wearing noise-canceling headphones to block out the hum of machines and the ventilation system's constant drone. It's just another Wednesday night. Routine. Quiet. G4S, the company that owns this depot, is not some small operation. At the time, it is one of the largest private security firms on the entire planet, responsible for protecting nuclear power plants, government buildings, embassies, and classified facilities across dozens of countries. Their systems are trusted by people who cannot afford to be wrong. Tonight, they are completely, catastrophically wrong. To understand how this robbery was even possible, you need to understand just how many moving pieces were already in motion hours before the helicopter appeared. This was not a smash and grab. This was not a desperate crew with ski masks and a bad plan. This was a synchronized, multi-location assault designed from the ground up to make it physically impossible for Swedish law enforcement to respond in time. And it started with a vulnerability that almost no one had thought to protect. Because the Swedish government had never classified cash depots like this one as protected sites, the building's architectural blueprints, floor plans, rooftop layouts, stairwells, windows, reinforced doors, everything, were technically accessible to anyone who knew where to look. The robbers had studied this building. They knew where the counting room was. They knew where the main vault sat. They knew which walls could be blown through and which couldn't. They had mapped every second of what was about to happen. They had also done something far more important. They had made sure that no one could stop them. Let's start in Montenegro, a small, peaceful island community on the eastern outskirts of Stockholm, best known for its scenic waterfront and holiday cottages. It has a hangar. Inside that hangar sit 2 helicopters belonging to the Stockholm Police Department. Somewhere in the early morning darkness, a lone figure moves through the bushes surrounding the hangar. He's carrying something under each arm. 2 plastic boxes, not very large, fitted with wires and blinking lights. He places the first box directly in front of the hangar's main entrance. He walks around to the back and places the second one there. Then he pulls out a hatchet, smashes the numeric entry pad beside the entrance door, not to get inside, but to make sure no one can punch in the code quickly under pressure, and walks away. At the nearest bus stop, he discards his gloves, his mask, the hatchet, and a lighter. Then he disappears. Those 2 plastic boxes are not bombs. They are props. But no officer standing in the dark at 5 in the morning, looking at wired devices placed in front of a fuel-filled helicopter hangar, is going to call that bluff. The sky is still dark, but the plan is already working. Back at Västberga, Amelia has already pulled one headphone off her ear. Her boss has heard it too. He's already moving, because descending out of the dark sky above the building, hovering with almost surgical precision over the flat roof between a glass pyramid structure and the building's edge, is a Bell 206. White, lightweight, one of the best-selling helicopter models in the world, favored by flight schools, news crews, and charter operators. It can carry 5 people, including the pilot. It is not designed for heavy loads, and it was stolen from a flight school roughly 70 kilometers northeast of Stockholm less than 90 minutes ago. The helicopter lands on the roof, perfectly, as if the pilot has done this 1,000 times before. 3 men jump out. One is carrying a submachine gun. Another runs immediately toward the glass pyramid and begins swinging a heavy sledgehammer. Again and again, the impacts echo through the building below. The third man unloads equipment from the helicopter with the calm of someone running a routine delivery, climbing ropes, explosives, large mail bags, and 2 aluminum ladders that are clipped directly to the helicopter's landing skids. They have thought of everything. Inside the depot, Amelia's boss doesn't waste a second. He knows exactly what this is. He runs back to the counting room, yelling for everyone to secure the money. Get it into the reinforced steel cages, close the padlocks now. Then he triggers the alarm and calls building security. Less than a kilometer away, at the nearest police station, roughly a 10-minute drive, Inspector Göran Palm is near the end of his night shift. The alert comes through. Helicopter, armed men, G4S depot in Västberga. Palm runs to his car. A colleague jumps in beside him, and they tear out into the empty pre-dawn streets. He will later describe the feeling as surreal, like being inside a Hollywood film. Then, about 500 meters from the depot, Palm hits his brakes hard. Stretched across the full width of every access road surrounding the building are metal chains, each one roughly 10 meters long, embedded with metal spikes. Drive over one at speed, and the tires are destroyed instantly. Palm gets out on foot. He can hear the helicopter still circling above. He can't get any closer. He calls in a request for military air support. The military cannot provide aircraft in time. He asks if officers are authorized to shoot at the helicopter. The answer? Absolutely not. Too dangerous. Wait for the National Task Force. Palm stands at the roadblock and does the only thing he can do. Nothing. Meanwhile, at the Montenegro hangar, 2 officers who raced there to launch the police helicopter have reached the entrance and stopped dead. 2 wired boxes, blinking lights. They retreat to a safe distance and call the bomb squad. The White Bell 206 continues orbiting above the cash depot, completely undisturbed. There is no aircraft anywhere in the Stockholm sky that can intercept it. The police have been checkmated, not by superior firepower, not by superior numbers, but by 2 hollow plastic boxes and a set of blinking LED lights. Back inside the building, the 3 robbers have reached a glass panel that won't give way to the sledgehammer. One of the men pulls out a stick of dynamite, presses it against the glass, runs the wire, and detonates it. The panel shatters. They descend into the building on ropes, climb toward the 6th floor, where the counting room sits, blow through a second glass barrier, and arrive at a heavy steel door separating them from the staff. It takes 3 explosive charges to force it open. That's when Amelia's team leader makes the call. Secondary exit, down the stairs, into the main vault. Now, they run. All 14 of them. Down through the smoke-filled stairwell and into the airlock just outside the vault entrance. The airlock is a hermetically sealed security chamber designed to allow 1 person through at a time. 14 people crowd inside, including a colleague who is pregnant. The moment the door seals, there is no cell reception, no way to call anyone. The vault door itself will not open. Building security has sealed it remotely because they cannot confirm whether any of the attackers have slipped in among the employees. 14 people. No air circulation. No signal. No way out. And somewhere above them, the robbers are cutting through padlocks with a buzzsaw. The padlocks on the reinforced cages last seconds under the blade. The men move through the counting room, filling mailbag after mailbag with stacked banknotes. They are not rushing. They know exactly how much time they have. They have planned for every contingency. They have neutralized every response. They fill 7 bags, at minimum. 30 minutes after the helicopter first touched down on that roof, the 3 men reappeared in the building's courtyard. They hoist the bags upward. They climb the aluminum ladders still attached to the helicopter's skids. One of them pauses on the ladder for a moment, looking back, as if calculating whether there is time to go in for more. Then he pulls himself up and in. The Bell 206 lifts off. By the time the National SWAT team reaches the building, the helicopter is already somewhere over the forests south of Stockholm, flying low, every light extinguished, invisible in the pre-dawn gray. Civilians in nearby towns will later report seeing a small white shape moving unusually slowly over the treetops around 6 in the morning. It descends into a forested park area. The robbers land, take everything, and walk away into the trees, leaving behind only a GPS device and a handful of cable ties. The helicopter is found by investigators 2 hours later. The airlock at the depot is finally unsealed. Amelia and her colleagues stumble out, shaken but unharmed. At the Montenegro hangar, the bomb squad fires a water cannon at the threat and finds 2 completely inert plastic boxes with battery-powered lights inside. At a bus stop in Montenegro, firefighters put out a small roadside fire. In the ashes, a burned mask, a pair of gloves, a hatchet, a fuel canister, a lighter. Sweden woke up to news that something unprecedented had just happened. The heist dominated European headlines within hours. A reward equivalent to roughly $900,000 was offered for information on the perpetrators. And then, Swedish police had to answer a question they desperately did not want to answer. They had known. A full month before September 23rd, Serbian intelligence services had sent Swedish authorities a detailed warning. An international crew of professional thieves was planning a robbery in Sweden. A helicopter would be used. 3 men would execute it, backed by a support network of around 20. They would target a multi-story building, blast their way inside, and grab the equivalent of approximately $13 million in under 5 minutes. It would happen by September 16th, or it would be called off entirely. Swedish authorities had taken the warning seriously. They placed 2 suspects under phone surveillance. They moved police helicopters to a supposedly more secure location. They identified the 2 likeliest targets: the Panaxia depot in Bromma, western Stockholm, as the primary candidate, and the G4S depot in Västberga as the second. For 4 full weeks, officers maintained heightened alert through the nights leading up to September 16th. Nothing happened. Not on the 16th, not the 17th, not the nights after. So they stood down. The police helicopters went back to Montenegro, and exactly 1 week later, on September 23rd, the robbers struck the second target on the list. The investigation that followed involved 50 full-time detectives working for nearly a year. Phone records, surveillance logs, court documents, wiretap transcripts, and forensic evidence were painstakingly assembled into a picture of how this had been organized. At the center of it was a man named Goran Bojovic, a 38-year-old Swedish building contractor with family roots in Montenegro. Investigators had already been monitoring him, partly because of the Serbian tip. Wiretaps showed that Bojovic had been in regular contact with a childhood friend named Milan Savo, who had relocated to Belgrade and built connections to organized crime networks there. Throughout 2009, Bojovic made multiple trips to Serbia. According to surveillance records, he was transferring large sums of cash during those visits, paying, investigators believed, for expertise, logistics, or planning he could not source inside Sweden. In late August, a recorded phone call captured him asking Savo about the cost of helicopter pilot training. He had already phoned a flight school to check. Savo shut it down immediately. Training takes months. They needed another solution. On September 2nd, 3 weeks before the heist, a plainclothes officer who was part of the surveillance team watched Bojovic arrive at a waterfront location on the Stockholm island of Djurgården. 2 men were already there, waiting. The 3 sat together for about 5 minutes. Bojovic did most of the talking. They shook hands. One man walked with Bojovic to his car. The other got into a Peugeot and left. The plainclothes officer, appearing to walk a dog, saw everything. She couldn't hear a word. She didn't need to. 5 days after the heist, Swedish police announced the arrest of 6 suspects. Bojovic was among them. Investigators found a bag in his apartment containing approximately $15,000 in cash. He was believed to be the architect of the entire operation. Another man was arrested at Orlando International Airport in Florida, moments before boarding a flight to the Canary Islands. Swedish tabloids gave him an instant nickname, Flykten, meaning the escape. His real name was Alexander Eriksson, a television producer, a man who moved through fashionable Stockholm social circles, attended industry events, and was rumored to have contacts close to the Swedish Prime Minister. Investigators believed he had been the one in the cockpit. Between October and December, 7 more men were arrested. Among them was a man whose DNA, extracted from the burned remains of a glove and a lighter found at the Mittinga bus stop, placed him at the scene of the fake bomb placement. He was believed to be the person who had walked through those bushes in the dark and planted the decoys. Another name emerged that investigators already recognized. Zacharias Khalil had been convicted in 2000 for participating in the theft of priceless artworks from the Swedish National Museum, one of the most audacious art heists in Scandinavian history. He had served his sentence, he had been released, and now his DNA was appearing on the sledgehammer recovered from the roof and on other physical evidence from the scene. This, detectives concluded, had been his second armed robbery. The trial opened in the summer of 2010. 10 men. 5 charged with direct involvement. 5 charged with aiding and abetting. The prosecution was confident. DNA evidence, phone records, surveillance footage, and at least one defendant willing to admit partial involvement. The defendants denied almost everything. Eriksson, the TV producer, offered a smooth explanation for why his DNA might be inside the stolen helicopter. He had been a member of the flight school that owned the aircraft for 15 years. Of course, traces of him might be found on a helicopter from that fleet. Perfectly innocent. He also claimed an alibi. On the night of the heist, he said, he had been in a car accident in central Stockholm during the early morning hours. This might have been convincing, except that 1 hour after the supposed crash, surveillance cameras at a McDonald's in the suburbs, located roughly a 30-minute walk from where the stolen helicopter was found abandoned, recorded him walking in and calmly ordering breakfast. Just before 7 in the morning. Composed, unhurried. The prosecution's argument: 2 other defendants had staged the car accident specifically to manufacture an alibi for him. One of those defendants, Khalil, eventually admitted his role in it. After 18 days of proceedings, 7 of the 10 defendants were convicted. Eriksson and Khalil each received 7 years in prison for armed robbery. Bojovic and 4 others were found guilty of aiding, abetting, and harboring criminals. 3 defendants were acquitted, and 3 men, the ones who had actually landed on that roof, swung the sledgehammers, cut open the cages, and flown away with the cash, were never definitively identified. They were never charged. They were never caught. The Västberga robbery did not just embarrass the Swedish police, it changed the country. In the years before 2009, Sweden had been experiencing a surge in cash-related crime. Bank robberies were at a 15-year high in 2008. Cash handling had become genuinely hazardous work. Trade unions were raising alarms. One banking industry report found that 1 in 4 retail workers had been a robbery victim at some point in their career. Some had been victimized multiple times. The helicopter heist, more spectacular, more coordinated, and more humiliating to the state than anything that had come before, became the moment the conversation changed permanently. Sweden began moving away from physical cash faster than almost any country on Earth. Retailers stopped accepting it. Banks scaled back cash handling. Digital payment infrastructure expanded rapidly. Sweden had been the first country in Europe to introduce paper banknotes, all the way back in 1661. Some 350 years later, it was leading the continent in rendering them obsolete. By 2016, the number of reported robberies in Sweden had dropped from over 100 per year to just 2. The logic was simple and brutal. If there is no cash, there is nothing worth stealing. By 2025, Sweden and Norway had the lowest ratio of cash in circulation relative to the size of their economies of any country in the world. And the money from Västberga? Investigators ultimately confirmed that the robbers had taken just under 40 million Swedish kroner, approximately $5 million at 2009 exchange rates. Not the billion that early headlines speculated, not even close. The Bell 206's carrying capacity had put a ceiling on how much they could take, and they had been disciplined enough not to push past it. Not a single kroner has ever been recovered.